we're at that part of the meeting where Phyllis beats me up when I try to brag on her, so I'm not going to do that tonight. Let me simply say that Phyllis is my favorite lady at 7 a.m.
He's right. All right, knock it off. I'm Phyllis, and I am an alcoholic, and I'm right where I should be tonight. I'm in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous with my family, and to where I can laugh. Where else can you go that people kind of harass you? Michael said he meant to bring a stool for me to stand on. And then he said he could offer to go on his hands and knees and let me step on his back. And so we're done with that. Oh, well, I forgot. Oh, shoot, we can't do that. You know, I was telling some people that after a while, you've been here, fortunate and blessed enough to be here a while, then the experiences, strength, and hope get longer and more. So you kind of pick out. And I will tell you, I need to do one thing here. Excuse me. And I'll talk about this later. I am so honored to be here and to be with my family. I have this very rude, what I call a rude desire each time I've asked to speak, to say I started out as a child with the Bill Cosby line. And you know, the trouble is that that's probably true. Maybe not with the alcohol drinking, but with the ism. I did some really raunchy things behind there. My mother and father did a running battle with each other. And then they stayed together for the children. And my brother and I reaped the benefits of that, and yeah, which is a silly word for that one. But when I look back at that, and I've done this year for some reason, and I shared it in different meetings, that I think most of us do, looking back, and we think about where we were before our AA birthdays, the important ones. But this year, it has really been busy. And brought back, they're not bad. I mean, it's stuff I did, that's true, and where I came from and all that kind of stuff. But I figure that if I do what God has in mind, the higher power, the Great Spirit, whatever you want to call it, that's what I need to do, what I need to share. And I've been so comfortable with that it doesn't pass. The first time I was probably 4 or 5 months into sobriety, and Karen looked at me and she said, I think you need to be the 15-minute speaker. I will tell you, I fell apart. And she said, well, you going to lie? And I said, well, no. It went okay. But back to the beginning, I do believe in what it was like, how I got sober, and what it's like now. Because it's the only way I learned anything, is to have somebody show me that it was possible to not drink. And I had no idea, because it was where I went for everything. It was my solution. And one of the things that popped up probably yesterday about my childhood part where I did this lovely stuff, I have a brother, and he is 5 years younger than I am. And it was probably in my 8th grade or then in the first part of high school. And my mother was out doing meetings and doing this and doing that at night, and my dad was working up in Balsetts, Oregon, away from home. And I let a bunch of boys in the house. And what I tended to call a nosy neighbor, she called my mother and told her, and she came home. And you know what? I let my brother take the rap for that. I stood there and watched her punish him by taking away a few things. And if that isn't ism, I don't know what is. That's a terrible thing to do. Later on, my folks had a small cupboard in the kitchen, and they had all the alcohol they had in there. And the one that I remember was the whiskey. And I was about a sophomore, junior in high school. And I managed to dip into that. And once again, I blame my brother, because they finally realized that there was more gone than they'd done. And I stood again in that kitchen and watched my mother make my brother drink a half a bottle of whiskey because of what I'd done. I don't know if I ever told her the truth or not. I'm not sure. But the bottom line is my brother doesn't hate me anymore. That's jumping way too far forward, but he doesn't hate me for it, and I don't know why, because he sure should. He's a black belt Al-Anon, but you know, moving up and through, and when you look back and see what things were, they sure didn't look that way to me. I just knew that my mother, and this sounds like the Smothers Brothers, but I knew she liked my brother better than me, and that happened to be the truth, and she took every opportunity to tell me. Is that a reason to drink? I thought so. And when I found alcohol, and that was probably midway or about sophomore year of high school, I will never know how I got away with so much of it, because I would drink by going to the cupboard. I had friends who were perfectly willing to share their bottles with me and go buy it. And I thought the world had come alive because I didn't feel alone. Oh, my ego was something else. And the way I dressed, the way I acted. I can remember my mother hauling me out of a class in my junior year of high school and making me come home and clean my face and pull a sweater off me that was way too tight. So those things started early. Now, rather than focus on the in-between crawling fate that I went through, I did go to college, didn't finish, because I was busy doing other things. And but it was a good opportunity. I met my children's father at Portland State University. And we got married. That was number one, by the way. We'll go down to the rest of them later. And we had 3 children as things progressed. But see, he was a teacher, and he became a master teacher. He taught in California. Let me tell you, that is a great thing, because it gives you a heck of an excuse to drink. Because, see, we had to host a bunch of people. I had one of the best alcohol cupboards in the whole world. Trouble is, I had to keep going out and replenishing it before anybody got there for the event we were hosting. So it started and it kept on going. And as it progressed, I did utterly demoralizing things. My children, what they had seen in our home, I won't go into, but they saw things they never should have seen. I tied up with a bartender, and I got to tell you, that was obviously a good idea. And he had no morals. His wife was my best friend. And he was a very violent man. In the process of that, I left my children with her. I moved out. We took my kids with me, and they were very little then. And I took them with me, and I said, I just need to be free for a little while. And my husband then said, I don't know why. And I said, well, you don't need to know why. And obviously, I was still having an affair with my best friend's husband. And I left those kids alone in a small one-bedroom apartment with my daughter being the oldest. And she was probably about 11 or 12 years old. And then Mark was 10 and Danny was 7. So they were alone. I am so grateful today that nothing happened to them except damaging their whole internal structure and their minds. But I see I had it coming. I deserved it. I deserved to go out drinking. I deserved to do all this stuff. Finally, that man decided he wanted to go to Buffalo, New York, which is where he was, from Portland, Oregon, by the way. So I let the kids go back home to their dad. You know, one of the things I remember saying to a couple people who said, Phyllis, how can you do this? And I looked right at him, and it tastes bad in my mouth even because I'm sick and tired of being Steve's wife and Lynn, Mark, and Danny's mother. I much preferred the bottle, thank you very much. And the excitement, oh, Lord. So we went to Buffalo, New York. We ran. I had a little Volkswagen. We tied it behind whatever his car was. We took his brother with us. His wife had died in the meantime. And we went across country. Now, how we went across country, see, I have lessons I learned when I was drinking. I'm sure we all did. They aren't exactly high on my list. I learned how to shoplift. I learned how to go to a motel and get out without paying. I learned how to con somebody into telling me, oh, God, do you know my kids are so sick? Into giving me money. What a wonderful thing to learn. But we went to Buffalo, New York, and there's where the really downslide began. I always say that I ended up in a black glass pit with no handholds out until I got here. In Buffalo, the demoralization just went downhill. I remember calling my mother. Anybody else do middle of the morning, early morning phone calls to people other places? Called my mother from Drebeck's Saloon and said, I found the most wonderful family place. And I don't remember what she said. And I said, it's really great. Everybody's here and we're all having a great time. Well, we were all drunk. I talked to my kids in that particular state. And one of the things that I will probably never forget is at one point I was talking to my daughter a year or two after I moved there with him, and I said something, don't you talk to me with that tone of voice, I'm your mother. And she said, when did you start? And I just was absolutely offended. In that process, each of my children were allowed by their father to come visit me. And when I think about where I took them and that they didn't get hurt and they didn't get sick, I will never understand. My youngest son, when he came to visit me in Buffalo, and this man was evil beyond all, and then he was violent, never been hit. I got hit a lot. He'd give and take away. And I didn't have any place to go, I didn't think. He took away, I had gotten a dog, a German Shepherd, and I came home one day, and the dog was gone. He said, you don't need that dog, because the dog had tried to bite him when he hit me. We all have these demoralizing things in our past, and when our drinking, which is unbelievable. I tried to kill myself, and we'd come home, and I used to sing on a bandstand. My first husband and I sang and played for, he was a teacher, but we played in clubs, and we played for the American Legion and so on, and did some TV work. And so I tried to do that. Now, you're not really wonderful when you're drunk. And I always knew I was going to get beat up when I got home because somebody would make a compliment. And the clothes I wore, and unbelievable, because they were either painted on or too high or too low. So those are things that made up my past. And when I tried to kill myself, I can still remember I had been drinking probably 4 roses all night. And we got back to this 1-bedroom apartment. We were in South Buffalo. You can roll from bar to bar. It's really handy. And I did a lot of rolling. I was there during the blizzard of '77. And we went to the bar. We had to walk, but we went anyway. I don't know why we didn't die or lay in the snowbanks, because that was bad. But at any rate, we came home from a drinking night, and I'd been singing on the bandstand as a guest. And he hauled off and knocked me on the bed, and I grabbed a bottle of either Librium or Valium, and I thought I took the whole thing. Well, I came to in the hospital with a very sore stomach. They'd given me Ipecac. And so there I was, and they said to me, who do we call to take you home? And I just said, nobody. Well, it turned out, unfortunately, Mr. LHC had to give them his name when he brought me in. So he came and got me, and the first thing he says, don't you ever do that to me again. And the amazing thing, when I didn't know God was lurking in my life, he was anyway. Because the first thing I thought was, well, you SOB, I guarantee you I'll never do that again, but it won't be for you. Continuing on, because I had to work because he was tending bar. What a neat thing, because he knew how to alter the booze in the bottles so that nobody'd know we were drinking it while I was there. Couldn't hardly wait to get there after I so-called got off work. In Buffalo, I don't know if it's the same, but they have to close the bars. I think it's at 1:30, and they can't open until 7, but you can stay in there. So we would line up our drinks, 20, 25 drinks right in front of us. So it would last, and it didn't last till 7 o'clock. Continuing on with all this, I finally, and it took a while, I was there 5 years in that horrible mess. We went from place to place. I lived on staircases. I lived in cars. And one other thing I need to share, because it's amazing that I didn't go to prison. Don't know why. Well, I know why now. But I learned, like I said, to shoplift with his help. We took things out of high-end stores, Waterford Crystal, vacuum cleaners, blah, blah, blah. His children were grown up, and they gave us their Christmas lists to shop. And we'd get it, and they'd give us money for it. Now, isn't that a wonderful attribute to have? And I told myself I was just so excited about this special talent. We got caught one time, and I have no idea why that manager didn't put us in jail, because it was a fairly high-end store in Tonawanda, I think. And I had this really $60 dress for a little girl under my coat. And he took it back, and I don't know why he didn't put us in jail. So I had blessings that I didn't look at. At one point then, after I went, he had a sister and brother-in-law there. And I told her, I have to get out of here. My mother wouldn't speak to me, can't blame her, my kids didn't. But my sister-in-law called, we did get married, by the way. And my sister-in-law called my dad, and she said, Mr. Dinger, if you, and I didn't know this till way later, your daughter's going to be dead if you don't send her money for a ticket. He sent a ticket, not money, he sent a ticket to the airport in Buffalo, New York. My brother-in-law was a controller for that airport, so we could go and he says, let's put you in the back door. The important part of this story is that I ran the van. We created this scenario so he couldn't find me. He was at work. And it was in a one-bedroom. Buffalo has a lot of two-story that are houses, but they're cut into apartments. And I went there, and there was no place to hide, basically. But he found the taxi driver that had taken me there from the Seneca Mall, and he was coming up the stairs into that upper apartment, and all I could do was lay behind a bed that I couldn't get under. I could see his feet coming right there toward me, and his son, very violent son, was with him. And I swear it had to be that far. He could have, one more step or two, he could have seen me and hauled me out of there. And from somewhere out of nowhere came the 23rd Psalm. And I started thinking it in my head over and over. And David came in and said, Dad, let's go. She's not here. And he turned around and he left. Douglas, my brother-in-law, took me to the Cleveland airport because he was afraid that Dick would show up. And they told him that Dick had called. And they told him that I would be on the plane at 7 o'clock in the morning. So Douglas drove me to Cleveland. That airport was shut down, not the planes, but it was empty because it was late at night. And I sat there with a box tied with a big fat rope and a very beat-up suitcase because Ruthie and Doug had taken the stuff I brought them over 3 weeks and hidden it up in their attic. And there was a little man, only thing in there was a little man with a broom sweeping. And, I thought exactly at that point a trusting person. But he looked at me, he says, honey, you go to sleep, I'll wake you up when you have to get on your plane. And guess what? I did. I got on that plane and headed for California. See, until I got sober a while, I never looked back at being taken care of. So, did you think I quit drinking? I don't think so. I went to California and moved in with my Aunt Margaret. By the way, she's been matron mater for about 3 of my 7 marriages, so we've been very close. And I flew into California, and he found me on the phone, but he didn't dare come because my aunt told him what she'd do. I kept drinking. I kept doing demoralizing things. I didn't steal anymore. I stole time, I guess was about it. I stole a time from my employers. I went to work at General Dynamics, that when it was still in California. Now, how fortunate can a drunk be but to go to work for a drunk who is exceptionally brilliant? He only died 3 or 4 years ago of alcoholism, and they kept him. That's how brilliant he was. But he and I'd go out to drink. We'd go out at lunchtime, and we'd drink. And we'd drink some more. And then I would have an excuse not to come back because I was with my boss. So I did steal. I stole from my employer. You know, we all know what the demoralizing things are. The important thing is that, I can't remember which number of marriage it was, but nonetheless, I turned him in to Pomona Valley Hospital because, and we lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Rolling Heights, California. And he was a drunk. And I thought, whoopee, I have insurance, we're married, I'll just turn him in to Pomona Valley Hospital. And he went. And what I know now, by the way, is I turned him in not for his benefit, but because he kept finding where I hid my bottles, which was a little hard to do when you're in a one-bedroom apartment. It's a little difficult to hide them. But he was drinking my booze, and I'd have to get up really early, run to the little store up above whatever the street was, and get 3 or 4 bottles, little ones, to take into the building, because at General Dynamics, government facility, they checked all our purses. And why they never found mine, I don't know. Again, who's taking care of me? So during that time, I just kept on drinking, and it got worse and worse and worse. I hooked up with people I would never even look at, and got married. There's a hero in that part of my story. Her name was Bobby. Now, when I did get to drinking, Bobby was one of the ladies that had a bunch of sobriety, and her story was she got married probably almost as much as I did. She just didn't bother getting divorced in between. I thought, oh, my hero. It costs so much money to get you divorced. But I did, and like I said, I would go out drinking. When I was still in Buffalo, by the way, my name was well known. We would go to Clavoons or Drayback's, and Clavoons was about this long, a long bar. And isn't it nice? I'd walk in, and Herbie Clavoon was a great big guy, and he'd yell from the back of the bar, and he'd say, "Here comes Phyllys, hide the Rhine wine and the 7 roses." And I thought, isn't this nice? They'll have my stuff ready for me. You know, at any rate, I kept drinking, and I turned him in. Now, part of the thing about Pomona Valley Hospital's program is the significant others are required to go as well. And pretty soon they're saying, "Are you sure you don't have a problem?" "Oh, really?" "Of course not. I don't do that." I went to psychologists. "You sure you don't have a drinking problem?" "Absolutely not." "Where are your kids?" "Oh, they're with their father." They didn't want anything to do with me. They came down to visit me, and we went out drinking. About that time, my aunt made a comment. She worked at General Dynamics too, and she said, "You know, I'm really worried about you." And I said, "For what?" "I'm having a great time." We had a thing called program reviews, you see, and the Navy came in from all over the place. So we held cocktail parties for them, and we were the hostesses. Isn't that nice? Because we all ended up going home with somebody that wasn't ours. And those kind of demoralizing things are just, they pop up now, and I kind of go, oh my Lord. You know, it just getting the drunk boss that let me keep drinking whenever I wanted to without getting fired, and going from there. But the end result, because I believe in getting into how I got here and what it's like now, is that, number one, when I turned him in and they made me come to that program, each of us had a counselor, and they told me I had to go if I wanted to keep him there, and I certainly did, that I had to go to some Al-Anon meetings. Now, no offense, those of you who do both or who are Al-Anon, but God, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. My come to Jesus time was I was in a meeting in the lower part of Pomona Valley Hospital, an Al-Anon meeting, and this lady said, "My alcoholic," and my brain went, "I know buddies," and I got up and ran out of that meeting. That is the first time, because I'd been going to some 6 a.m. meetings for him, you see. So it had to have sunk in. If you think what you say and what you share in these meetings, believe me, somebody's going to hear something sometime. You never want to back off. I went home and had a drink to think about it. It was just shortly. They called it Secretary's Day back then, not administrative assistant, not this, not that. It was Secretary's Day, and one of my bosses took another friend of mine out for lunch, and I was putting away the champagne like there was no tomorrow. I went back up to the unit and said, guess what? This was, I believe, it was August 25th, or April 25th. And I went back and said, guess what? I just went out to lunch and drank, I think just a couple bottles, I think it was more like 4 or 5, of champagne, and I'm just fine. And they looked at me and said, oh yeah, you're great. You're wonderful. On April 26th of 1983, I went back to this 6 a.m. meeting I'd been going to for him. And I stood up and I was shaking absolutely apart. And I said, I'm Phyllys and I'm an alcoholic. Now, I grant you, I'm a little shorter than some of you, but Nikki was about 4, I'm 4'11", she was about 4'9", and she turned around, excuse me, because I think it's important to say exactly. She said, it's about fucking time. Oh my God. That's when the journey started. Did I get it right away? No. I didn't drink again. Don't know why. Because, man, when I'm without that stuff and I don't know what else to do, I'm empty and I'm in pain and I'm scared to death. I didn't know how to drive, and I'd been driving for years. I was petrified. I kept going to that meeting. I got a sponsor, but not for 6 months. Please don't do that. Oh, God. And I put in, some of you have been in meetings with me, but it just cracks me up at my arrogance. I had business suits, and I went to the Triangle Club, and Karen was sitting down, and I had on my business suit, and I stood over her, and she wasn't impressed, by the way. And I said, well, they tell me I need to get a sponsor, and I guess I'm asking you to be my sponsor. She pulled her glasses, she still does this. She pulls her glasses down and she says, well, let me tell you how I sponsor. And oh God, you call me every day if you break a shoelace or you accidentally think you see something that's wonderful. You come and we work the 12 steps in the big book. You're going to go to a couple of women's meetings, and that horrified me, let me tell you. I wasn't going to any women's meeting. You might want something I had. Not likely. We started with that. I got the basics. And I'm so grateful for that. So it started on a road, and I got it the way it came out of the big book. I am so grateful for that. One of the things that before I left California, I was walking down the hall at General Dynamics. When you put me in charge of something at General Dynamics, especially when I was drinking, everybody knew I was in charge by God, and you paid attention, and I had the final word. Now, I did get a little better in the first few months of my sobriety. But I was walking down the hall with Fred Foy from Vitro, and I said, I don't know why people keep treating me like this. They act like I'm coming at them, or they're this. And he said, Phyllis, that's how you acted. So I had the name of Dragon Lady, and it was not nice. And continuing on with the sobriety part, I will tell you that I didn't know, I can read words on a page, but I'm telling you, without a sponsor, I had no clue what it meant. What does this have to do with drinking? What does this have to do with anything? So Karen had me come for an hour every week. And when I got to the fourth step took me about till the 7th or 8th month, 4th and 5th. And again, you need to pay attention. I told her everything, or I wrote it out, and I will tell you, she said, now go take a shower and come on up here. And I got up there with that 4th and 5th step and handed it to her, and she says, oh no, you're going to read it to me. And I thought, well, that's uncomfortable. I got to say this out loud. But I see the value now. One of the things that only Karen and my friend Wendy. I got sober in April, she got sober in June, and we hung out together. Nearly got 86 out of the Triangle Club because we get to laughing so hard at the meetings. But, you know, I just can't say enough about how I was given the program, because it wasn't, you know, we say we can love you to death, and that would have been true with me. I can guarantee you. Anybody gave me wiggle room or said, oh, poor Phyllis, I'd either run or worked it for what it was worth. It didn't happen. But she would be there and she'd pull me up. I called her one day from General Dynamics, and this is how it works. And it still works for me. And I would, and she said, are you standing up? And I said, yeah. She said, sit down. And I said, okay. She said, so in other words, everybody in that facility is so busy thinking about you that they have time for that and not get their job done. Well, you know, I was still new enough. I was highly offended. I cannot understand this, that they aren't thinking about what they said that. What do you care? The gifts I've been given over time, and it took me. Did I get a wonderfulness all over the place? Rod always says he's become charming. And and I had to learn that I was a human being. It just absolutely floored me that it was okay to make a mistake and not beat yourself up. It was okay to have a thought if you didn't act on it. You know, if you're new and maybe not so new and having a bad day, I will tell you, I believe, and it isn't every day. There are days that are really rocky, but every day there is a place to go and someone to talk to, as well as pray, if you stop what you're doing and don't act on it. What this is, one of my dear friends gave this to me. When I worked on a bandstand, I wore mesh hose, sequin hot pants, and tight tops. And this just cracked me up because I got the lampshade. I may have done that at some time too, I don't know. but I did, by the way, in Chino. I went to a house party, and in Chino, I jumped off the roof of a house into her swimming pool. Why didn't I die? I don't know. But into sobriety. I learned over time because I went to meetings. Quite frankly, I was afraid to do anything else. I had no place else to go, according to me anyway. And I didn't, really. I learned to make the connections. And how did that happen? Because I wanted to be part of something. I always felt alone. My aunt said, how could you feel alone in the middle of the family reunions? And I said, because I did. I didn't fit anywhere. And nobody thought I was important. And my mother, like I said, it's not an excuse for drinking. I know that now. Well, if you don't do it, your brother will. My brother and I are very close. Don't know why. And he's forgiven me for stealing from him. But back to this, like I said, I have to tell you that the 12 and 12 and the big book, still, I have not been bored in a fair amount of time. Progressing through the beginnings of sobriety, I didn't always want to do what you suggested. I picked, I don't know, I was trying to save my fourth or fifth unsolvable marriage. And I decided to stay home from meetings. I probably had 4 or 5 years there. And I decided to stay home from meetings. And my sponsor lied to me. She told me somebody I hadn't seen in a while was going to be only at the meeting, at Tuesday night's meeting. And I said, oh, well, I'll come. I sat down, and he didn't show up, by the way. He wasn't coming at all. And she and another lady named Joy, who was a counselor at the hospital, pinned me in, and they took me to the meeting after the meeting. And she said, do you know how close you came to drinking? And I said, well, I do now. So somebody, if you're listening, and if you'll go there and let somebody help you, is everybody, it'll kick in eventually. We moved here 24 years ago. You know, I believe it's up to us who have a few days and nights together to share that some things still need to be watched. You need daily maintenance. I do. I need daily maintenance. I need to pay attention to what you say. I need to not act on what's in my head, guaranteed all the time. And we had a new house. We were here. We were fixing the house. We were this or that. And I went to one meeting a week if I felt like I needed it. God, again, is very good to me. two people with 19 years, not necessarily here, I honestly don't remember where, and one with 15 went back out. And I came home from that meeting and I looked at Earl and said, I can't do this the way I'm doing it. I need you to, and he's a normie, by the way. He can't be normal, he married me. But no, you all know that. But I said, I have to. If you can't live with this, then we need to talk about what we can do to be okay with breaking up and not hurting the kids. But I've got to go to more meetings. I've got to do everything I told you I would do way back when we started dating. God, that's an ugly word when you're 50 or 60 years old. Jeez. But I told him I go to meetings, I sponsor people, I had to go on the hotline, and that will never be negotiable, ever. But I had to reconfirm that because, see, I need to fix my house. I needed to do this, I needed to do that. I will tell you up front, there is nothing that's more important than sobriety. Before I left California, a very wonderful man that I'd married, that he died in my arms one night of a massive heart attack. I was thinking about it the other day, and I thought, oh my Lord, I don't know where I'd be, and frankly, Phyllis, get out of there. You don't need to know either. But we had dated, gone to coffee with groups and done all the right things. Poor Karen, she had me do a fourth and fifth every time I got divorced, and it didn't keep me from marrying again. But I said to her then that, I said to my friend Wendy, who had known me an equal amount of time, she said, Phyllis, she said, what are you talking about? I said, well, among other things, I'm comfortable. And she said, well, have you been to bed with him? And I said, no. And she said, God, what did you do with my friend Phyllis? So we do grow, we change, and we go back to what God meant us to do. Glenn died of a massive heart attack. We had been married, God, we were together 3 years and we'd been married 9 months. And I didn't drink. And that's because of you guys. And the first day I came out, I hit a button on the phone when the ambulance came to pick him up and called Dory. Didn't know I was calling Dory, and I said, I think Glenn just died. I'm going to Chino Valley Hospital. I had the police take me over. She came. Karen came. She called some other people, and they kept me with them and came back with me and carried me through. And I said, I need to go to that morning meeting. Is that because I'm so smart? Well, not really. It's because it's what I needed to do. I was in the morning meeting the morning that Glenn died. And where else would you go? I have examples of Rodney and of Dan Sickles and of so many that have done the same thing when their spouses have died. We get that here. You don't have to isolate. That was what scared me when Glenn died. I turned around and said to Dory, don't let me isolate. Please, I had about 8 or 9 years in. Anyhow, back to the now where we are. You know, I have a really good life today. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And anybody, if I say something here that offends you, you're probably in the right place. And I get to have my kind. I don't have my program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have the program of Alcoholics Anonymous if I'm smart enough to go there, to go to meetings, and to sponsor people, to listen. I love the fact the last 2 or 3 months, I haven't just been listening. I caught myself yesterday morning leaning forward to listen to somebody. I don't even want to stop that, ever. Because I don't think I got it. I don't ever want to think. I'm recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. But that disease, I'm not afraid of it. I have a high respect for it because something occurred, and I do need to share this because it shocked me no end. I had accidentally, outside of Cindy's shop, stepped on my little dog's foot and hurt her. I pulled my little one when we were down there. So when we got home, she was still limping and crying, called the vet, had to go to the vet, and I cried all the way down the hall, down the street, down to my vet to get an eyedropper to give her a painkiller, and cried all the way back up. Now, I don't like taking pills. There are some I need to take, but I won't even take an Advil just because of me, unless I really have a physical pain, physical something. And coming up that hill, and I'm not kidding, it's not woo-woo stuff, guys. And I heard in my head, I'm going home, I'm going to take 3 Advil and get in bed. Earl will just have to fix his own dinner, which he can't. And I'm glad nobody was next to me in a car, because I'm literally yelling, you son of a bitch, get out of my head. It's there. It's still there. But you guys have given me the tools to pick up. I don't ever want to go away from here. When our friend Ellen died, there is a vacancy. But I have to do what they told me when Glenn died, and that is to remember the memories. Take the good stuff. When Glenn died again, my sponsor and a very, very pithy lady had about 30 years, and she said, you will not play the grieving widow. And I thought, what the hell do you think I am? And they wouldn't let me wear my glasses because they said I was hiding behind them, and they had me chair a meeting 3 days after. And but they carried me through it. And I understand that now, because I'm safe here, and I'm able to say most things. There are some things I got to tell you, they only belong with your sponsor. There are other things that you can share in general. One of the things I believe is men sponsor men and women sponsor women, because we can just con the pants off of each other and then some. It changes. But I was blessed for a couple of years, and I sponsored Troy. And I shared this at his memorial service. And he said, when I thought about it, prayed about it, and talked to Karen about it, but he had a fair amount of time. And so he was sitting across the table from me at home, because I still believe you need to come sit down and we need to build a relationship. And he said, do you want to know why I picked you as a sponsor? And I said, well, you're going to tell me anyway. And he said, well, number one, you're more like Homer than anybody I know. I said, you're right. I do. Those of you know Homer, he's got a slight edge to him. He had a slight edge. He died 7 years ago, I think, yeah. And he said, and the other one is because you're too old for me to want to take to bed. And I said, well, honey child, you ain't got a prayer in hell of doing that one either. But you see, I have been blessed, I think, to be called the Dragon Lady here. And the fact is, it's because if you want what I have, I will do anything I can to support you. I won't buy your groceries. Yeah, I might. But I won't give you money. I won't solve your problems of your marital problems, because I can't. One of the blessings of this program is my 3 children, I'm in their life. They're all in Oregon. But we talk, and they're back in my life. My son, my 62-year-old son, informed me the other day on the phone, and he wasn't being nasty. He's come back in my life, and he said, Mom, I'm just glad we can do this now, even if I'm away. And he said, but I still have some bad feelings about when you left us. And I thought, ooh, ouch. I thought we'd gotten that done. No. But I can be a living example. If they want to take it, if they don't, I'm not giving up my sobriety for anybody. I am so pleased to be here, and I want to do one thing here. One of the girls I was very happy that they told me, 2 of them I said, about an app that's on here. And so, as I stand here today in front of you, because of you, and what I've learned in this time, I am standing here with 40 years, 11 months, and 25 days, or 14,970 days, one day at a time without a drink in me, without a drink. It's because of you guys. I'm going to close with, because I've let God in. I have a very funny God. He has a good sense of humor. But I still can sing, not like I used to. But there's a song I still cannot, especially this month, I can't get through. And the last 2 stanzas are, it's Chris Christopherson's Why Me? And the 2 paragraphs I can sing up into and not quite get through. He says, tell me, Lord, if you think there's a way I can try to repay what I've taken from you. Maybe, Lord, I can tell someone else when I've been through myself on my way back to you. That goes for you guys, too. Maybe I can tell you something. It will help me, too. So thank you for asking me to share and for being here tonight. Well, quickly, my husband has dementia. He's 94. He's deteriorating. Let me tell you something. I can't do this without you. I really can't. And frankly, I found out that isn't a weakness. That is not a weakness. So thank you for being here and being part of my, what is it Bill says, my semi-emotional sobriety, but my emotional sobriety. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Phyllis. Oh, my friend Matt's going to come up and acknowledge the people that, visiting newcomers and people that read.
My name is Matt. I'm an alcoholic.
Hello, Matt.
Thank you, Phyllis. That was wonderful. Okay, we'd like to recognize Ricky, Drew, and Lisa for the readings. Paul for his newcomer. Welcome, Paul. And Kevin from visiting from Minnesota. Welcome.
And I want to acknowledge Matt for taking care of the 7th tradition and the book work and the close supervision by Aaron. One more hand for my friend Phyllis. And this is where we get to make an incredibly large circle.